You ever read one of those authors that brings such a unique flair and sense of purpose for making the world a better place? We're going to talk about one of those authors today. Roll the intro. Welcome back, Book Dragons. I'm really glad you're here with me today. I am really excited to talk to you about a couple of books. Before we do, I want to draw your attention to this QR code up here. If you have not used this before and you would like to, make sure to scan it with your phone, or you can click the link in the description below so that you can find other places that I communicate with my fans, followers, stalkers, whatever you might be. If you would like to find me on the internet, I would love to have you check that out. That being said, let's go ahead and move on to the topic of the video today, and that is to tell you why I think you should read The Great Cities Duology by N.K. Jemisin. I became an instant fan of N.K. Jemisin with the Broken Earth trilogy, and I absolutely loved this series as well. The Great Cities Duology is made up of The City We Became and The World We Make. It is an urban fantasy set in modern-day New York. The boroughs of New York are coming alive. They have selected their avatars, and each of these avatars has one goal, and that is to protect the city from an otherworldly threat that seeks to destroy the heart and soul of New York and the heart and soul of the people in it. And the story really starts out with a bang as we watch the primary avatar of New York do battle with this otherworldly entity and lose. And so the beginning of the story is really all about the other avatars trying to locate the primary avatar, who they need to find so that they can get some assistance in honing their powers and bringing the city back together. And you may be wondering, why does New York need all of these avatars if it's got this one primary avatar? And that really is because even though New York is one city, it's made up of different boroughs that are often drastically different from each other. And so each of the avatars embodies the unique characteristics and culture and social values of the borough that they have been chosen by. And there are other cities in the world that have gone through this metamorphosis just like New York is doing. And so they do have some aid from some of those other cities that have been through all this before by the same otherworldly entity. So now we're going to talk about the characters of this story, because that is really what makes these books shine. And you'll notice that most of the avatars have a name that is very similar to their borough. So the first one I want to talk about is, of course, the primary avatar of New York as a whole. He's a young queer black man and a graffiti artist, and we never really learn his name, but everybody just calls him New York because that's what he's the avatar of. And he's pretty brash and standoffish, distrusting of people in general, because he's had so much against him for so long that he just has a hard time trusting. And then there's Manny, or Manhattan. He is the avatar of Manhattan, and Manny is his nickname because he has just arrived in New York City, and upon arriving in New York City and being chosen as the avatar, he has gotten amnesia and doesn't really remember much about who he is. And so everybody just calls him Manny for short. He is also a queer black man, and he's a financial analyst and business executive. And then we have Brooklyn Thomason, who, you guessed it, is the avatar of Brooklyn. And Brooklyn is a former rapper. She went under the moniker of MC Free, and she has since retired from the hip-hop scene and is making her way in life as a lawyer. But music is still a huge part of her life, and the power of music is still a very huge part of her life, and that power comes to express itself in what she needs to be the avatar of Brooklyn. And then there's Bronca Savanoy, who, you guessed it, is the avatar of the Bronx. And she is a 60-year-old lesbian Lenape woman who works for the Bronx Art Center. And so art is a very big part of her life, and that comes to be expressed in her dealings with the entity as the avatar of the Bronx. And then there's Padmini Prakesh. She is an immigrant to the United States, and she is a graduate student living in Queens. And so she has been chosen as the avatar of Queens. And then we have Eileen Houlihan, spelled like this, but you can guess where she lives, and that is Staten Island. And she is an Irish-American woman living on Staten Island, and she lives with her family, one of whom is her racist police officer father. And being the avatar of Staten Island comes with its own unique sets of challenges, because Staten Island is very different from any of the other boroughs of New York. And then there's Vanessa. She is a Portuguese black woman living in New Jersey, and she ends up becoming the avatar of New Jersey because of the close proximity to New York City. And she ends up joining in the fight as one of the avatars of the city. And out of all of these different avatars, I think my favorite is probably Brooklyn. She's just a fantastic character and kind of the voice of activism for the group. They all play their part in working against the enemy, but Brooklyn is kind of the public face of the group of New York City avatars, and she's just a fantastic character. No nonsense, stands her ground, and all the other avatars have that as well, but I think she's probably the most outspoken and direct of the group, and I just absolutely loved her character. Manny as well is a fantastic character, so just some really great character work in this book. And then one character I have not mentioned yet is the woman in white, and she is the public face of a malevolent, otherworldly entity known as Relia. And if you're familiar with that name, Relia does come from the Cthulhu mythos, so you can imagine there is a lot of Lovecraftian activity going on in this city, spearheaded by the woman in white. And the more people she brings over to her cause, those people begin to develop little tentacles that are like attached to their bodies, whether it's their neck or their head or something like that. And only people who are tuned into the energies of the city, like the avatars, can see the tentacles. And it's just a really cool twist on Lovecraftian myth. And I love the way that N.K. Jemisin incorporated that into her story. And the magic of this world is very strongly centered in the gifts and talents of the different avatars. And so Brooklyn's magical power, for instance, comes from her music, and Padmini's affinity for math plays into her power, and so on and so forth. Each of the different avatars has a speciality that they are able to use in thwarting the powers of the enemy. As you can probably tell, the thrust of this book is very strongly geared towards diversity and inclusion and political activism and things like that. So there are a lot of themes in this story that play into that desire. One of those is gentrification, which is one of the main goals of the entity known as Relia in trying to take over the city of New York. It wants to gentrify the neighborhoods of New York. And if you're not familiar with the term gentrification, it basically refers to programs designed to improve neighborhoods at the expense of the people who live in those neighborhoods that are deemed to be lesser and lower class. And so one of the major goals of Relia is to make everything better by getting rid of the people that it thinks are the problem, and as a result, making the neighborhoods better. And so the spokesperson for Relia is, of course, the woman in white, and I loved the play on the color of evil there, because in a lot of stories that you read, Black is the color of the enemy and white is the color of good. And in this story, it is literally flip-flopped. The woman in white is the enemy. She looks good on the outside, just like the improvements that they want to make look good on the outside, but it's destroying people's lives under the surface. And so that whole play on white being the evil color, I just thought that was really awesomely done and well handled. One of the other big themes in this book is exposing socio-political exclusion based on things like race, gender identity, sexual orientation, and as a result, political activism plays a huge role in this story, and the powers of the avatars combining to assist with eliminating these threats that are trying to change the heart and soul of New York. I just thought it was such a fantastic story. So let's talk pros and cons, okay? One of the things I liked the most about this story was its commitment to diversity and inclusion and giving human beings a place where they can feel safe without being looked down upon. I think that is the biggest strength of this series, and that led to a story that was very well paced. So that's another thing that I really liked, is the pacing. Everything was paced so well. It just moved, guys. It moved quick. Everything happened so fast, and there were like really intense moments that you're really worried about the characters in the story, and it was unpredictable. I just really, really loved that. The characters were so well done and believable, and they represented their boroughs very, very well. From what little I know of New York, I don't know a lot about New York, okay? So I'm not pretending to be an expert on the culture of New York or anything, but what little I know of it, the characters felt very authentic as representatives of their boroughs. And the magic system was just so cool, and there were some epic moments when that magic was being used. Like one scene in particular, I remember Brooklyn, or MC Free, going off and just busting a rhyme, and the power just radiated out of her and quickly diffused a very dangerous situation in one part of New York. It was just amazing, and there were other flashbang moments like that where you're just on the edge of your seat and like, yeah, that was so amazing. And you wish you would have just been a fly on the wall to see that happen. So some just really great, exciting, and intense moments in this story. And for me personally, I didn't find anything that I did not like in the story. There are things that you may not like. The book does tend to be kind of preachy when it comes to the topics and themes it addresses. That didn't bother me, but I have heard other people say that that was bothersome to them. So I'm just putting that out there. The book can be preachy at times, but in a way that flows with the story. So I didn't feel like it was taking me out of the story to talk about this point over here or this point over here. It just flowed naturally through the story. You saw the themes unfolding. It wasn't just like, here it is and I'm just gonna info dump all this to you. No, it wasn't like that at all. That was really the only con that I think could be explored, but it didn't bother me at all. I was like really on board with the entire story and the message that she was trying to get across by writing it and the themes that she was exploring. But I think the perspective on that really depends on the person who's reading it. For me, I resonated with the message of the book because those are topics and themes that are extremely important to me and essential to make a better world. So maybe the preachiness of it, so to speak, didn't bother me because of that. So as far as my rank goes for the story, I'm going to put this in my hoard. It was just a fantastic series. I would read it again. I would highly recommend it to anyone, especially if you like urban fantasy and you like Lovecraftian stories. I think this is a winner in both categories. It is just so well done, so unique, so different, and such a positive, hopeful series. And I hope you'll read it. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Have you read this series? And if not, have you been on the fence with it? What are your thoughts on that? If you did read it, did you enjoy it? Has it been on your list and you just haven't gotten to it yet? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. And until next time, guys, make sure you're reading great books. I'll talk to you soon.